I have solved who Poppy Playtime's prototype really is. No, for real this time. Hello Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that keeps asking, what's their deal? You see, Theorists, this video was supposed to be my updated Poppy Play timeline. Every single year, I do one of these videos, and when I do, I go back and recheck all of the official canon media to see if there's anything I've missed. And I do mean all the canon media. The game, the 2 ARGs, the book, the Roblox spin-off, the Fortnite collaborations, the Minecraft collaborations, and yes, even those dodgy NFTs we don't like talking about. All with the plan of having it ready for Chapter 5's release. I thought it was actually going to be pretty simple. Chapter 4 didn't really change that much from our previous timeline. All I would have to do is polish up some things, add our Chapter 4 theories, and that's it. Easy peasy. But then Mob released a few new teasers, and with them, I noticed one small detail that completely changed my understanding of this franchise's arguably most mysterious character. Experiment 1006, the prototype. He's the big bad of this series, and it's looking like we're finally going to get to meet him face to face in this upcoming chapter. But for the fan base, the main thing we've been wondering is, who is he? First, we thought it was Elliot Ludwig, the founder of Playtime Co. Then we thought it might have been Rich, the disgruntled factory worker that climbed the ranks. Then we thought it was Elliot again, only this time he was a clone. It's complicated, don't ask. The point is, with every new update, we think we've nailed down his identity, only for another update to drop that throws the identity into question once again. But now, loyal theorists, I feel like I finally, truly cracked it. And it answers everything. Why is he obsessed with Poppy? What makes them different from the other experiments? And what it all has to do with Elliot Ludwig's embryology experiments. So, put on your trusty grab pack, theorists, because it's time to launch ourselves into this theory. Try not to get too shocked by the answers. I promise they're not too much of a stretch. Alright, I'm done. Let's get on with it. So, first things first, let's talk about what exactly this guy is going to look like. Up until now, all we've really seen of them is their spindly fingers and their shadowy spider-like legs. Well, over the holidays, Mob decided to give all of us a present. More details about 1006's appearance. The main one is this New Year's Day post that shows Poppy standing opposite the prototype's hand, which is holding a poppy flower with 4 of its legs stretching into the light. It's quite an intimidating image, although Poppy is very small, so I'm not sure he'll be this large and intimidating in reality, but looking at the legs, we can see that we have been right about at least part of 1006's creation. We suspected it to be a hybrid of human parts and machines, given the bone-like structure in the arm as well as the red and blue veins that run up and down it. And here we can see that the legs aren't just mechanical. They involve muscles and tendons that you would see on joints like this to help the legs move. And you can see these muscles even closer on the limited edition shirt that we've got right now at theoryverse.store. It's only available for the next 48 hours, so click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to grab it this weekend before it's gone for good. But that wasn't the only interesting part about this New Year's Day image. I mentioned 1006 is holding a poppy flower. Well, now take a look at this Christmas artwork Mob posted. See anything familiar? No? How about now? Still no? Okay. How about now? Right in the back is a picture of a man holding a poppy. This image specifically is actually based off of a tarot card called the Fool. I mean, just look at them, they're practically identical. Tarot cards have a lot of different meanings and interpretations, but one that I got from our HR manager and resident tarot card reader Rachel is that while it can represent good things like new beginnings and childlike confidence, it can also represent naivety, ignorance, and lack of experience, with the outcome being to try and encourage the reader to be cautious and warning them of the importance of being informed and prepared. All things which to me sound just like the prototype. We know they're experimenting with finding the secret, something which he needed the doctor's help with, but now the doctor's gone. So 1006 is on their own working on the experiment. They haven't got that experience and they're naive about how easy it's going to be to overcome, jumping off the edge of the cliff with reckless abandon like the fool walking off the cliff in the tarot card. So if this is meant to be the prototype, what does that tell us about his design? Well, the fool is often portrayed as a red, blue, and yellow jester-like character. And if you've been a fan of this franchise for as long as I have, alarm bells just started going off in your head. During the Chapter 4 ARG, there was a jester that appeared in one of the puzzles after you put all of the versions of Harley's notes together. At the time, we wondered if this was going to be the upcoming Doughy the Doughman, or maybe another Chapter 4 villain we'd yet to meet. However, nothing ever came of it. No new toy, no new experiment, nothing. And so it's just sat there living in my head rent-free, haunting me until now. Because if the prototype is associated with a card often depicted in Playtime's signature red, blue, and yellow color scheme, then I think we have found our match. The prototype 1006 is the missing jester. Just look at the arm holding the poppy again in the New Year's teaser. It looks like a grab pack, sure, but it also looks like a yellow sleeve with a blue puffy shoulder in the background like the one we see on the tarot card. And sure, he has spider-like robot legs and arms, but they've specifically kept the rest of him hidden. The part that I suspect will look like a jester toy that we've yet to be introduced to. I mean, he is a prototype after all. Clearly they weren't able to make him a perfect little toy. They had to make some compromises, like nightmare-inducing spider legs. Now, that's all well and good. I'm finally glad we were able to make some use of this random jester clue, but that's just what he looks like. Let's be honest, what we really want to know is who the prototype is, or should I say who they were before they became the prototype. All the toys here were children transformed into toys. Even Poppy was the daughter of Elliot Ludwig, brought back from the grave. As I mentioned earlier in our last Chapter 4 theory, I theorized that it was a genetically modified clone of Elliot Ludwig himself, forced to grow into this monstrous metal frame as part of the Bigger Bodies initiative. It was mainly due to this line.
It's time to come home, Poppy.
In the orientation notebook, we saw that Elliot had recreated his and Poppy's home inside the factory, the room where we first met Poppy in Chapter 1. So for 1006 to be calling her home, it felt like it was referring to their home. But as I was going back through all of the dates and documents for my timeline video, which is harder than you'd think because most of the documents in this game are left completely undated, which is horrible business practice, by the way. Yet another reason why Playtime Co. is completely defunct, but regardless, by doing it, I rediscovered this document from the Chapter 3 ARG. It's the case report for Catnap, and in it, Leith Pierre, the head of innovation, mentions that Catnap is getting on very well with the prototype, and that Lockhart, their private investigator, had some theories about why that is, dating back to 1989. Now, we know that Catnap wasn't created until November 20th, 1990 under Harley Sawyer, thanks to the orientation notebook, which means this 1989 theory must be related to 1006. But that presents us with a dilemma, because Harley Sawyer didn't start the Bigger Bodies initiative until he rejoined the company on January 15th, 1990, meaning 1006 isn't a bigger body, but something else. This explains why Harley struggled so much with the creation of the Bigger Bodies. The earliest experiment we know of Harley's officially was Experiment 1015. It's noted as being a complete failure, which felt a little unusual if Harley had already successfully made the prototype. Why now is he struggling 9 experiments later? But if this was his first time trying to replicate someone else's findings, his confusion makes way more sense. And with that in mind, I knew I needed to go back and reevaluate even more to figure out what exactly the prototype is. The only experiment we know of before the prototype is Experiment 814. In previous theories, we've continued to assume that this experiment was conducted by Harley, mostly because of the final line. Perhaps something larger than a rat would yield different results, implying the whole wanting to experiment on orphans thing, which led to the whole using orphans to make creepy toy monsters thing. But with this change in the prototype's timeline, it means it can't be Harley trying to make a bigger body, but someone else trying to revive something or someone that has died. And remind me, where do we find this document again? It's inside Elliot Ludwig's office, the same place we find a VHS tape telling us about his tragic family loss.
In the 1960s, an unfortunate family death had pushed Ludwig down to his lowest. How did he manage to stay determined even after suffering such a tragic loss?
Plus, if you analyze the top of Experiment 814, the handwriting looks very similar to the signature Elliot used on his letter firing Harley. In both documents, the letters are slanted to the same angle, the E's are written with a very similar curvy nature, and the I's are also slanted in that similar direction. This is Elliot's handwriting. Experiment 814 isn't about Harley's twisted desire to create bigger bodies from orphans. It was Elliot's desperate attempt to raise his child from the dead. He knew he'd be testing on larger subjects next because his daughter was always the goal. This means that 814 could be a lot older than we've ever thought. I mean, the paper itself is probably the most old and decrepit piece of paper we've seen in the series so far, and that's saying something because this game has a lot of old decrepit pieces of paper. But I raise it because to me, it looks old enough to potentially be from the same time as the Young Geniuses program. In case you don't remember, the Young Geniuses program was Elliot Ludwig's attempt to foster the next generation of inventors, including the infamous Harley Sawyer, so you can see how well that went. Once again, we don't have any evidence about its exact place in the timeline, but by looking at the poster used to advertise the program, we can see that the logo they use in the bottom corner is actually the old Playtime logo. The first time we see the more modern logo pop up in the timeline is during the Playcare introduction video, and thanks to our handy-dandy orientation notebook, we know that the Playcare opened in 1976. So, the Young Geniuses program would have existed sometime between the company's founding in 1930 and that 1976 advertisement. But we can actually narrow it down a bit further thanks to other elements of the poster's design. It's very reminiscent of the 1960s with its bright colors and bold lettering. Plus, during the 60s, President Lyndon B. Johnson was pushing a new progressive set of policies known as the Great Society. Johnson hoped to build a better future for all Americans, and a lot of the programs focused on helping disadvantaged youth get access to the same opportunities as their peers.
The Great Society is a place where every child can find knowledge to enrich his mind and to enlarge his talents.
Federal programs like the Neighborhood Youth Corps were made to encourage kids to get involved in their community and to connect them with local organizations to get job training or potential career opportunities. Something like Playtime Co.'s Young Geniuses program would fit right in. And it works out pretty nicely because it's right about when Elliot loses his daughter. He would want to bring in a bunch of kids to help him fill the child-shaped hole in his heart, figuratively and literally. These kids were smart, helping to push the boundaries of scientific advancement, like helping in the research of how to bring a child back to life as a toy. I theorized last time that the poem we saw at the end of the previous teaser, the one that asks, "Is this life?" was from one of those young geniuses. Someone who'd achieved the impossible with Poppy, but recognized the flaw in it. This new timeline would seem to agree with that idea, that the young geniuses were started in the 1960s as part of Elliot's plan to bring Poppy back to life. However, this does raise the issue of Harley. We know that he was a young genius, and yet throughout the games, we've seen that Harley doesn't understand Poppy or the prototype.
It's been weeks and weeks of taking things out and putting them back in, and taking things out and putting them back in.
The prototype, stubborn as he is, and always silent with each passing session, I'm still uncovering fresh data nonetheless.
If I'm right and these experiments were part of the Young Geniuses program, there wouldn't be any secret. He'd just know. Except he was removed from the program by Elliot at some point, and at a young enough age that he still holds a grudge against Elliot to this day. So it is possible that he was around for experiments like 814, but was fired before they were able to successfully create something like the prototype, which is why we see him using some of Elliot's teachings about embryology and the Poppy gel, and why he's so surprised when he sees Poppy for the first time. Quote, "Is it her? That's impossible." When Harley returned to Playtime Co. all those years later, he never expected Elliot's caring approach to yield results, and so he needed to figure out how they worked in order to succeed. His experiments worked, sure, but he didn't truly understand the secret. But all of that brings us back to the main question I asked at the start. Who is the prototype? If he's not part of Harley's Bigger Bodies initiative and instead was part of Elliot and the Young Geniuses experiments well before that, does it make sense for him to still be a clone of Elliot Ludwig like I theorized about previously? The answer is a resounding no. And the reason I think that is all because of this video that Mob released just a few months ago. It starts out as a simple OmniHand user guide, but about halfway through the video, the VHS is suddenly overwritten with footage of the Doctor watching the player's journey through the cameras around the factory, similar to what we saw in the build-up to Chapter 4. Specifically, it shows us the moment that Yarnaby is released to chase us. But what's really important is what's on the side of the monitors. The sticky note on the left side says keep an eye on 1007, 1172, and 1322. All experiment numbers. We already know that 1172 is Kissy and 1322 is Dowie. But who is 1007? They've never been mentioned before, and it's exactly one experiment number after the prototype. Harley started running his project around experiment 1015, which, as I said before, was a notable failure. So I don't think 1007 was conducted by him. His success didn't come around until 1160, Boxy Boo. And looking at this list with the context of this being while Harley is spying on us during chapter 4, I think it becomes pretty clear who it's supposed to be. Who would you say our three main allies are in chapter 4? The three experiments who help us throughout the chapter that Harley would likely want to keep an eye on: Kissy, Dowie, and Poppy. Guys, I believe that Poppy is experiment 1007. She is the only ally on Harley's list that he's watching that is unaccounted for. We know that he actively wants to keep an eye on Poppy specifically because she is defying his ally, the prototype, and because, in his words, her path leads to ruin. He was trying to recreate the magic of Poppy, and in doing so, ended up being turned into an experiment himself and eventually died at our hand. And finally, that number is an Elliot experiment, where the whole goal was to bring Poppy back to life in the first place. That feels like a huge reveal in and of itself, but I need you to stay with me for just a little longer, because if Poppy is 1007, then what does that make 1006? They're called the prototype, which we've assumed was because they were a prototype of the bigger bodies, but that never sat right with Boxy Boo being Harley's first success hundreds of experiments later.
And here you are, the first of many. You have proven my bigger body's initiative a success.
With Poppy being 1007, that shines a whole new light on them. They're not just any prototype. They are a prototype for Poppy. That might seem like a huge stretch, especially when I spent the whole first half of this episode talking about how the prototype is going to be a jester, which Poppy is most certainly not. But hear me out. Look at all the chapter 5 marketing materials. Poppy is everywhere. There's a Poppy cutter that's on fire, burning in the hallway of the lab, covered in Poppy gel, the thing used to bring her to life inside the prototype's domain. There's empty Poppy masks in the promotional images and in the teasers. We are being shown the failed attempts at creating Poppy, the empty masks and the spilled gel that fills the labs. The prototype dwells here because this was also their birthing place, surrounded by hundreds of other failed experiments. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if when we finally see the prototype's face, behind its jester aesthetic, we see another empty Poppy mask of an imperfect experiment staring back at us. It would also make way more sense why the Fool Tarot card was used. Remember, one of its big traits is childlike wonder and naivety.
Then of what use are you?
1006 isn't proud or ignorant because of its intelligence. It's just a child that thinks it knows best and is being told no. It doesn't fully understand the complexities of how to achieve what it wants, which is why it needs the help from people like the Doctor. It really is a fool jumping blindly into a world it doesn't even fully understand itself. The prototype was the first time Elliot got close to bringing back his daughter, but it was just an experiment. They'd been making biological toys for years, but before he put his daughter into one, he needed to experiment to prove that he could actually bring his daughter back. The prototype is just that, an experiment, a mishmash of mechanical and biological parts. They didn't need the body to be perfect, they just needed it to work. The hope was that some combination of biological and synthetic would bring his daughter back, and when it did, he was then able to move on to the real thing, using his daughter's cells to bring her back to life inside the perfect little doll, a doll that she inspired in the first place. The prototype was then left abandoned, a monster created out of pure love, only to be discarded by Elliot Ludwig in favor of the newer, more perfect Poppy. I predict that 1006 was then turned into a jester, a character often depicted with red hair, by the way. Now it would at least have some use in the factory. It was literally branded the Fool by Elliot, a joke, a laughing stock, and so as the years passed, first, as Harley came in and began creating more broken and failed experiments like Catnap. 1006 took them under their wing, protecting them and bonding with them, because it too is a child that felt unloved and betrayed by those who swore to protect them. But just as Lockhart put in the report, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching.
World premiere on Game Theory.
Poppy's Chapter 5 teaser is here.